AskReddit by Fresh Manager 7331. What is your favorite memory in your first car? My mom used to drive me to school before I got my first car, and we used to pass this 1969 Volvo that I always said was my dream car. A year later I started dating a guy from school and it ended up being his dad's car. We broke up and 6 months later our parents met and ended up getting married. I was gifted the car. I moved to LA and ended up selling it beforehand in Texas. One day, in LA, I walked outside and it was parked across the street from my house. It still had my homemade Fugazi sticker on it. I still think about that car all the time. It's following you. It demands a sacrifice. Now playing in a biograph near you, Johann Snickers Christina. Kind lame, but I had just gotten my license at 24yo. I hadn't driven on the freeway yet. A co-worker friend of mine helped me get used to it. Now every time I go up the on-ramp I always hear him say, "Punch it." Did your driver's test not include freeway driving? That's kinda shocking to me. Everywhere within like 100 miles of me does. The freedom it afforded me to just get away from my family. Upvote for your comment. Downvote for my family lol. When I broke into a retired military airstrip and drove really fast down the runway. Tom Cruise. Having sex for the first time in one, and last for that matter, never again lol. Still, a good memory. Does anyone else remember doing it? When I was 16, in high school, my dad was fixing something in my car and asked what the white stains in the backseat were. I told him I was eating vanilla ice cream and dropped it. He looked at me funny and said, "Why were you eating it in the backseat? You drive a two-door." I don't think he bought it. I remember filling it up for 44 cents per gallon. Felt like I was almost an adult. Yes, I'm old. 1969 Chevrolet Impala. Used regular leaded gasoline. Edited to add vehicle details. Like the Crusher Impala from Roadkill. My first car was just a economy car, no special memory for when I drove it for 7 years. But after getting better cars, my first car became a hobby test subject and my favorite memory was polishing it to look new again. Going on a road trip with my friends. We drove for hours, singing along to our favorite songs, stopping at roadside diners, and just enjoying each other's company. It was a carefree adventure that I'll never forget. I'm 39 and my first car was a 1970 Impala that my dad sold me at full price and I had to fix the brakes myself. But my favorite memory was night cruises by myself listening to Europe, Aussie, Affy and so on. It was like flying through the night. No destination, just me, the car and the road. There's something so damn special about just driving around with no destination in mind. I bought my first vehicle in a long time about 3 years ago, and one of the first things I did was a Sunday drive through the countryside. Not needing a key to open or even start it, if you knew how to fancy it right. I used to do a lot of highway driving and, for a time, I kept a clown wig in my car. When I would pass a car that had a family or small children in it, this was before the proliferation of handheld tech, so they were often looking out the window, I would put the wig on and then slow down so they could pass me, only now, I was wearing a clown wig. And if they noticed, I'd do that a couple of times, taking the wig off and putting it on again, without making eye contact or drawing attention to it, but I could still see the kids pointing and laughing. I probably only did that 3 times on different occasions before I lost the wig or grew tired of it, but it made me laugh when it happened. It feels good just remembering it now, 30 years later. Man, I used to be fun. What happened? I haven't thought about that in years. Thanks, OP. I wouldn't be too surprised if one of those kids, grown up some, posts their memory of you in some Reddit thread. Driving everyone to Whataburger for lunch during school. It was a 1972 Malibu with Yosemite Sam floor mats and I didn't go anywhere under 80. OMG, I remember those mats. Hanging out with the guys in the bed of my 80s Ford Ranger when I was a teen. Not a care in the world besides finding some booze and where to go party. My dad was a firefighter and responded to a vehicle accident where a Porsche was written off. He found the spoiler on the side of the road and took it home. In the middle of the night one night he bolted it backwards onto the back of my 1980 Hyundai Stella. The car was a pure piece of shit and I felt so embarrassed driving it to school with that backwards spoiler on the trunk of the car. Now I look back on it as a fond memory of my dad and the sense of humor he had. 2002 Crown Vic. Mild rock crawling 1/4 of July. I still have my first car. I bought it in 1987. I also still have my third car, and my seventh. There are a bunch of memories in each. I can't think of a favorite. It would depend on my mood at the time. My first of 3 convertibles. When I went to my first drive-through lol, I was so happy eating that burger in my car. Corolla 2006S. Definitely not sex. Parking at a KFC parking lot in deep winter and the hood basically explodes with smoke and steam and I drive it through the snow with no power steering and no power brakes all the way to park it at a mechanic shop and get a ride home from there. That was a trip the serpentine belt had busted. I think 1993 Chevy Corsica. The freedom to drive around and pick up friends. I hated having to wait for someone to get me, or having to ask my parents after a long week of them working to take me somewhere. I also was always full of anxiety when my friends drove. I preferred to drive everyone instead. Then I got a stereo system in my car and everyone wanted to ride with me anyway. Having sex with this one guy and then just hanging out and talking for over an hour. I only had that car for like 3 weeks until I totaled it though. I had a Pinto wagon back around 1985 and once my mother asked me, "Why are there pillows and blankets in the back of your car?" Lol. First time going on a long ride on the freeway with the sunroof off. My first independent trip in the car. I drove around the block to buy Linkin Park's Meteor CD when it first came out. Every time I hear that record it brings me back to 16-year-old me with a car to drive anywhere.